That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Wonder Woman 1984, the third film directed by Patty Jenkins, which Warner Brothers will be releasing in conjunction with HBO Max Christmas Day 2020 after months and months and months of delays. And I'm sure we've all seen that film preview more times than we like to count.
Yeah, the trailer's good. Better than the movie.
The trailer is good. I think this should have been called Wonder Woman Romancing the Stone or Wonder Woman Be Careful What You Wish For.
Oh yeah, those would have been good.
Based on...
Patty directed the first Wonder Woman.
Yes, and of course her directorial debut was Monster with Charlize Theron back in 2003.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so it was a big deal for her to be the one to direct Wonder Woman after that large gap.
Oh wow.
In projects that she tried to get off the ground.
Okay, let me describe the basic plot.
Sure.
This film revolves around a villain named Maxwell Lord.
Played by Pedro Pascal.
He is a failed businessman who's obsessed with being successful. So he finds out there's like a mythical crystal that whomever possesses it and holds it is granted one wish. So he is able to obtain the stone and wishes that he were the stone. So now he has unlimited wishes. So basically he walks up to people and says like, don't you wish I owned all the oil in the world? And they say yes, and then he gets it. But we find out kind of later on that whomever's wish is granted, the stone takes something from them. Or now that Maxwell is the stone, he gets something from them. So when it was just the stone takes like what?
Your greatest asset.
Your greatest asset. So, 1984, we find Diana, Wonder Woman.
Which is the monkey's paw, as the characters in this film often bring up.
So Diana, no, you're fine. So in 1984, Diana's working in a museum.
The Smithsonian, right?
The Smithsonian. Kristen Wiig gets a job she's a PhD as a gemologist.
Named Barbara Minerva.
Barbara Minerva.
Minerva, of course, is the Roman goddess of wisdom and strength.
So...
warfare.
So Maxwell was able to obtain the stone by hiring like some thieves to steal it from some jewelry store in the mall. They also deal in like black market, like antiques or something. So he's able to... the burglars steal the stone, but then they're apprehended by law enforcement, and law enforcement turns over all of the things, the artifacts these burglars stole to the Smithsonian. Maxwell finds out that it's there and that Kristen Wiig's character is the one sort of in charge of that department. So he kind of smooth talks her. He obtains the stone, crystal. So the bulk of the film is Maxwell trying to like control the world by like granting all these wishes. Okay, Diana / Wonder Woman, when she held the stone initially, like early on, she wishes, we don't hear her say this, but obviously she wishes for Chris Pine's character to come back. Steve, which happens. Diana holds the stone and wishes she could be crazy, sexy, cool, just like Barbara holds the stone and wishes she could be like Wonder Woman, or like Diana. So now Minerva, Barbara, has powers like Wonder Woman. But she doesn't really understand that yet, because she just wants to be like confident, sexy, and cool.
Right.
Things come to a head when in Diana's research, she and Chris Pine fly to Egypt.
To follow Maxwell Lord. Which doesn't garner anything because all of the answers are in this book that some stoner in like DC has possession of. A mind tome, if you will.
It's so stupid. But he explains basically what it is, and the only way to solve the problem is to either like destroy the stone or crystal or Maxwell, or everyone who wished for something relinquishes their wish. And this is when Kristen Wiig's character, Barbara, switches, because she's like, I'm not giving up my confidence and my powers. So now she's gone bad. She defends Maxwell because Diana and Steve go to the White House, they go to the White House because now Maxwell is like, he's in control of everything and he's at the White House. When Diana and Steve show up, they try to apprehend him, but then Barbara shows up in her new like bad bitch attire, and she prevents the apprehension of Maxwell. As payment, he grants her another wish.
Which is not explained.
Which is not explained how that rule happens. But this woman wishes that she could be like an apex predator unlike anything we've ever seen. So guess what we get? Like a reject from the movie Cats.
A ghost pepper chili cat.
A ghost pepper chili cat. It looks as bad as like the cats from the movie.
Well, and the character, that's supposed to be Cheetah, is my understanding from the comics.
Okay.
And, Gal Gadot, whose name did I mispronounce that in another film?
You have, yes. It's Gadot. It doesn't rhyme with the dough.
Which I knew that, but I think I've had so many conversations that my brain twisted it back around. She's wearing some kind of animal print high heels early on that Barbara comments on.
That's right.
So why wouldn't they make her look like... Instead, she looks like that Star Trek alien that was played by... God, what's that actress's name? From Atomic Blonde.
Charlize Theron?
No, her lesbian love interest in that.
I didn't even know she was a lesbian.
Anyway, go on.
So obviously the goal is to stop Maxwell. It all culminates with Maxwell discovers, and this was the part that really took me out. He discovers that like it's 1984 and there's this new technology, basically like satellite communication. Mm-hmm. And the president of the United States is explaining to Maxwell this technology, and he says basically with this we can touch every household in the world if need be. And Maxwell's like, you can touch? Because the whole premise of the stone is like, the crystals, you have to touch it. So he's like, well, I want to be broadcast to everyone so I can touch them and make everyone wish for something at the same time. Because then he would have like, infinite wishes for himself. So he does that, and the world, like we see everyone around the world wishing for things, being very selfish, and the world starts to crumble. Diana is able to defeat Barbara very easily. She gets into where Maxwell is transmitting, and she's able to stop him because while he's transmitting, she wraps him with that lasso of truth and basically shows everyone who's watching the truth. And the truth revolves around the opening scene of the film, where we see Diana as a young girl, basically like back wherever the hell she's from, like playing like a race with some other person, and Diana cheats to win. But in the end, she loses because basically cheaters never prosper. So it's that premise that Diana's explaining to the world via the satellite transmission. So everyone relinquishes their wish. Maxwell's the last one. And the only reason he does it is because a side plot is he has a son. Alistair, this little Asian boy, who the few interactions we see with him early on, it seems like Maxwell is like annoyed by his son and doesn't really want to interact with him. But for some reason, the idea that Maxwell could, or that Alistair could die is enough for Maxwell to relinquish everything.
And then we get the exposition we've been waiting for on his character with flashbacks of his own childhood abuse.
He was a bedwetter, and that's why, he's been a failure. The end, the final sort of...
is a major spoiler because she's not even in the IMDb credits.
Oh yeah, spoiler is during the credits. Because we find out the person who Diana beat in the very first scene, isn't that who she, like, that's who she's racing against, and she cheats, right?
I don't think so. That's not who she has the armor from.
Oh, that's not the same person?
I didn't think so.
Anyway, we also learned that like part of the Amazonian woman lore
because as a child, they've already divorced themselves from the men.
You're right. Okay, scratch that. Part of the Amazonian woman lore is when the women had to defeat all of mankind, there was one Amazonian woman who was selected, or who chose to stay back and fight everyone. And they built her like this amazing coat of armor, which Diana wears during the scene where she defeats Barbara. But that Amazonian woman's name is Asteria?
Asparagus.
And in the credits, we find out that Asparagus is played by Lynda Carter. So Lynda Carter makes a cameo.
She does, and she looks great.
And she looks fantastic.
Because she did not notably make a cameo in the first one.
No. Okay, that's it.
But I think that is a good jumping off point, that particular costume, to talk about, because neither of us, unfortunately, like this film.
No.
And you, more so than I, am a big fan of the 2017 Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Which I've only seen once when we saw it in the theater then. This costume is where her golden winged costume that was supposedly so strong it could withstand all of the men that were beating up on this woman. Kristen Wiig as Cheetah is able to just like tear through.
She tears that shit up like lickety split.
And I think I'm starting there because it's a good example of how I found myself having to try to understand what the movie was trying to, like, if there was some greater subtext there. I don't think there is, but I don't know if you could make the argument that this was made to withstand the contempt of men, if you will, but because the Wiig character is a woman, she was able to tear through it. If that is something,
maybe. But then again, yeah. Why do you have to come up?
Why do I have to come? Why is it? Because they are so obvious on so many other levels with what they're doing. Why wouldn't they be more obvious with that sentiment?
Let me go through my notes. Okay, the opening scene with little Diana playing the race and cheating is 11 minutes, and it was boring as hell.
He was so proud.
I was so upset because this movie is 152 minutes long. So we could have.
Sure.
We could have cut this up a little better. But that opening scene does nothing except after we find out that Diana cheated and that she's not going to win, her mother explains to her that no true hero is born from lies.
Robin Wright explains it to her, who's not
her auntie, sorry. But speaking of her mother, who's played by Connie Britton.
Nielsen.
Oh, Connie Nielsen. I thought it was funny that she's a blonde, but she has very visible roots. So I'm trying to figure out who does highlights in Amazonia land. That'd be a fun scene. That would have been better than that long ass intro. So from that stupid intro, we've transitioned to the robbery of the crystal from this mall.
The attempted robbery, yeah.
The attempted robbery, 1984 mall. That robbery, I mean, we started on such a low note with that, the young Diana running this race, to now we go to this lackluster robbery where Wonder Woman shows up and apprehends them.
What did Susan Powter say as a guest judge on RuPaul? It was hokey. It wasn't good.
Yeah. So it just two big scenes back to back that I thought were, and then I wrote down lame and corny because Diana and Barbara have an exchange where they keep saying lame and corny. And I thought that's how this movie feels. So Maxwell is a terrible villain. And initially, we feel sorry for him because it just seems like he's a failed business person and he just wants to be a success. But then we learn later that really he is defrauding people and basically set up a Ponzi scheme.
Yes, with his Black Gold Corporation. I took him to be representative of prototyper Gordon Gekko from Wall Street, whose famous line, of course, is "Greed is good," and here it's a lot more watered down to "Why not ask for more?" I did appreciate that they have, two villainous outside, that are outside of the heteropatriarchy, right? Looking for power and recognition, because both of these people are invisible with whatever they're trying to do. And there are shades of Pedro Pascal and his son that kept reminding me of the assassination of Gianni Versace and Andrew Cunanan subplot, which is where I wanted it to go. But it's very much a pale echo of what outsiders in the age of excess, I think, were trying to achieve.
Okay, Kristen Wiig. When I saw the trailer, I was surprised. I didn't expect her to be in this film. But I thought, she's going to do something comedic, and then, I didn't know what her role was. So I don't think as an actor she was well utilized in this film, because that characterization, Barbara Minerva is not funny. So before she turns evil, she's just kind of an awkward lady.
Yeah, like many in SNL skits.
Right, but not funny. And there's no real trauma except that people don't really notice her. And that's exemplified mainly because when she shows up for her first day at work, the woman who hired her, who's played by the lady from Insecure,
Natalie Rothwell,
she doesn't recognize her. So you hired this gemologist who's a PhD, and when she shows up, you don't even know who she is. I thought that was lame, like super lame writing to exemplify that Barbara is invisible.
Which is very much like Selena Kyle prior to being Catwoman in Batman Returns.
Okay, but once we realize like Kristen Wiig's gonna switch up and probably be a villain, my issue with her is when things like that happen, I expect the person playing that role, because we expect that like Kristen Wiig is gonna turn into like this fierce, powerful entity that's gonna use it for evil. But Kristen Wiig is not a stunner, and when you put her next to Gal Gadot, it just feels like they needed to hire, if they're gonna hire her, then she needs to be funny and dark. Like I was thinking like the Joker, like Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix dark. Or hire like a bad bitch who seems like the bad version of Gal Gadot.
Yes, and two things on that front. There's no agenda for Barbara Minerva, who this whole premise is lacking any kind of sense of being provocative. And what happened to her that beyond, and other than that, again, is the film trying to portray her as the problem with white women in general is that they have no agenda?
I don't know about that.
But because her driving force is that she doesn't want to give up being sexy and pretty. And then the glow up is so limited.
That's my issue, the glow up. Like, I actually thought Kristen Wiig looked better before she switches, because they put like a lot of makeup on her and this awful like eye makeup, and her hair's raggedy after the fact. When we first meet her, she looks kind of fresh faced. She's cute. All they do is put her in tighter clothes and worse makeup and hair.
Right. But I'm saying, like, going back to no agenda, what she is accosted, by a drunk man as she's walking home one night that Gadot saves her from, that she later has a scene where she beats him almost to the point of death, really. But there's a way to talk about women's experiences or some kind of trauma that is generally accepted as something that's a cause worth championing, and how villains always do it in the wrong way. That could have been done with her character.
Getting back to not understanding the rules, so whenever someone makes a wish, it's granted immediately. Like immediately, it happens right away. But when Wonder Woman, Diana, asks for her ex back, or Chris Pine's character, Steve, back, it happens very slowly. What happens is his like soul embodies another person's body. So to the world, we all see that man, but to Diana, she sees Steve. And she doesn't see, it takes a couple of days for him to find her. And I thought that seemed stupid.
It did, because then it sets up that awkward thing that happens in Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg. Like,
also, when Steve died, it was like 40 years prior, right? Like, so then when he shows up, he seems kind of confused with like what's going on in the 80s, but then he also seems very capable of doing everything, including flying like a modern 1984 fighter jet. But prior to that, there's a scene that is, I'm assuming, was supposed to be funny, but not funny at all, where Steve is trying on different outfits.
In this man's apartment, yeah.
In this man's apartment. That was a waste.
Well, it also was hammered into our heads endlessly with the preview that ran for months on end. But
him getting into the fighter jet, and of course, initially we're like, why would she do this? Doesn't she know, like, the air traffic control is going to stop them? But then we realize that's her invisible jet. Yes. That he knows how to fly, because he says it's just like, he says all you need to know about flying is like, it's like riding the wind. So that he was able to control. But then prior to that, he says he was trying to look for her, and he tried to ride a bike and couldn't figure it out because it was a stationary bike. I thought that was dumb.
It was that.
So
yeah.
You couldn't figure out a stationary bike doesn't move, but you can fly a fighter jet with all new controls.
And strangely, it ends up being one of the very few artifacts of how they're trying to evoke 1984.
Speaking of a waste of time, so I feel like the opening scene's a waste of time. The scene with him trying on clothes. There's a scene where, as they're flying, it's 4th of July. That's the date, and we see a fireworks display, and then we see them flying through the fireworks. I didn't understand. Like, we don't need all that. This movie is 2.5 hours long. They're just wasting time.
What was my joke that's like riding around Inglewood on July 4th? That's how that felt.
South Bay on the 4th of July is lit. I also, because I don't read comic books, I certainly didn't read any comic books with Wonder Woman. I didn't know she could fly.
I don't believe that. I don't know.
But in this movie, she's flying.
Sure.
So that threw me off a little bit. In fact, another scene of wasting time is when she does, because when her wish is granted for Steve to come back, her powers slowly deteriorate, which I was also confused by, because other people, whatever's taken from them is taken from them immediately.
Yeah.
But for Diana, her powers just get minimized. So I don't know if that was because her natural ability is still superhuman, because she's still able to like kick ass. She's just like at 60%.
Sure.
Okay, so the scene where so in order for her to get her powers back, she has to relinquish her wish, which means she has to send Steve packing. Like, he's gonna go back to being dead, I guess. Which, that explanation of where he was also bothered me. She asks him, where have you been? Like, because presumably you've been dead till I brought your ass back. And he says, which I thought was such terrible writing, he says, I can't really put it into words, but it's good.
Yeah.
That's all the explanation we get for where he has been for the past 40 years.
I think there's a lot of missed opportunity here, and a lot of it comes from the screenplay, which Jenkins wrote with Jeff Johns and David Callahan. But yeah, it's just, there's nothing to stoke your excitement in this.
The final sequence, which is long, it's like 20 minutes of Maxwell doing the satellite transmission and granting the wishes, and for some reason, like, he's in like this cave with all the technology and the monitors. It gets very windy. I didn't understand why it was so windy. He's just granting wishes, but that seemed very drawn out, along with after Wonder Woman beats Barbara and goes into the cave, it's so windy that she can't like penetrate anything. But when she finally does and puts a lasso of truth around him, she has like a monologue, which I thought was super corny.
It is.
Basically talking about living your truth. It was so corny, and it's not till the end of her monologue where we see the lasso around Maxwell's leg that the audience realizes, oh, she's talking to all the people watching the transmission. But for that 3 minutes of her just rambling on, I was like, am I taking crazy pills? What is happening right now? And then my final note is Maxwell, while he's granting all these wishes, he's becoming sick.
Yeah, but they never really bring that to any logical conclusion. He just gets like blood in his eye.
He starts to look like he's dying.
Yeah.
And I just didn't, and he even mentions like, oh, I'll just start wishing for like people's body parts so I can get healthy. But he doesn't.
But he doesn't start doing that. But
so like, I don't understand why he let himself get to the brink of death before he would think to like wish for like better health.
or a more natural hairline.
His wig was terrible.
You know, if we remove ourselves from this, the origins of Wonder Woman as a comic were by William Moulton Marston, a professor. There's a very wonderful film starring Luke Evans and Rebecca Hall, and I forget the little blonde's name, about the origins of Wonder Woman through this throuple that was kind of far ahead of the time. And the early versions of Wonder Woman were like kinky S&M type things. So to find this so neutered now, and in 1984, again, there's nothing provocative here. Like we're in the middle, you know, towards the beginning actually, the AIDS crisis. There are all kinds of things Jenkins could have used had she had actual control over this project. I don't know. Something to say.
Every trope this film used could have applied to like modern time. I don't understand why it needed to be in the 80s, except you brought up a good point. Since I don't read the comic books, I don't know if like 1984 is a thing, but
I don't either.
In this film, it didn't translate to me at all.
There's a way to do the 80s without being, also taking it too far and being awash in nostalgia. But Stranger Things, at least the first season, I thought did a really good job of evoking that mood in that period.
The music.
The music. So Hans Zimmer creates the score, and I think because it's so... there's such a lack of any 80s music in there.
There is no 80s.
There's a couple. They credit Duran Duran's Rio, and there's a track by the Cars, I think, which I think are early on at that gala. sequence. There's some light 80s music playing, but there's nothing. Where is that awesome Blue Monday cover from the preview by Sebastian Bohm?
Speaking of music, in Sylvie's Love, we were saying we didn't know who MC Light played. MC Light played the lady in the nightclub who says, you don't have to go home, but you have to get out of here.
That's it? She just unplugged that jukebox?
Uh-huh.
I was so distracted by how rude she was with that jukebox.
That's MC Light.
Okay.
Sylvie's Love is a good movie. Watch that.
Also, you were so distracted by how everybody's heads were turning for Kristen Wiig after her wish. And
I'm not making fun. I'm not saying Kristen Wiig is not like a good-looking lady, but if she's supposed to be the counterpart to Wonder Woman and use the power for evil, it needed to be someone who is like going to turn heads. Kristen Wiig is not turning heads. Again, unless they recognize her from SNL in this movie, I don't know why they'd be staring at her.
Again, I think, God, I think it's like that film Love Potion Number 9 with Sandra Bullock, where when people ingest that, they're automatically in love with you no matter what you look like. Like, it's that kind of mechanism.
Yeah, but the characters in the film, when the wish, like, they're aware that something's not right. Like when the president, like, he says, like, oh, I felt like I was here and now I'm there, and like, I understand what you're saying, but I think that these characters are in their right mind. Like when they're seeing her, they're not like, we're supposed to think that, you know, she is turning heads. Like just how she looks is turning heads. And again, I'm not like trying to make fun of Kristen Wiig. It just seems like such odd casting to not make her funny or really evil. Well, and then imply that she would like turn heads the way Gal Gadot turns heads.
Well, and then her reason for not wanting to give up her wish is, you know, you've had everything, I've had nothing. Well, not really. As a white lady, you've had kind of a few things, and you're not ugly.
Well, like, we're like almost half an hour and the battery's about to die. What would you give this film, just in case it does die?
I would give it 1.5 out of 5.
I would give it 1.5 out of 5 as well.
But I want to go back to like, did they take out all the 80s music because it's going to be streaming and not theatrical? Well,
they didn't want to pay for it. Now they know it's not going to get a good theatrical release.
It just seems so suspect that it is so lacking in any kind of period characteristics that, you know, I might have called typical, but at least would have evoked the mood I was looking for. Instead, I'm left to search for things like when Kristen Wiig is searching through records in the library for the origins of this stone, and the librarian says, "Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea, me," which is clearly a line ripped from Joan Cusack and Working Girl. Like it's like there was that thought put into this, but where did all the interesting things go? I don't know.
To the same place the budget for Monster Hunter went.
Oh God.
Are you done?
Sure.
Bye.
Bye.